I'd be remiss if I did not wish you a happy Columbus Day, as I do every year. And it is Columbus Day. It will always be Columbus Day on Columbus Day. It will never be Indigenous Peoples Day, no matter how much they insist on it. And they are insisting more and more each year. So here's a report from Axios today. It says more cities will recognize Indigenous Peoples Day instead of Columbus Day on Monday, but some Native advocates see it as a symbolic gesture that still falls short of the progress needed. The holiday has a layered and complicated history. Some see Indigenous Peoples Day as overdue recognition for Native communities, while others view replacing Columbus Day as disrespectful to Italian-American heritage and a loss of cultural celebration. More than half of U.S. states still refuse to recognize either day as an official state holiday. The divide is more than symbolic. It excavates deeply rooted tensions over the nation's identity and history. For years, Native scholars and lawyers contested the idealized story of U.S. westward expansion, saying that it masked displacement and violence. Gabrielle Galanda, a member of the Round Valley Indian tribes and an indigenous rights attorney in Seattle, says Indigenous Peoples Day is a symbolic gesture. She says, quote, "It gives Americans a brief opportunity to reflect on our existence, but it doesn't address the legal and civil rights issues plaguing our communities." Because, it's for her, it's not, yes, Americans can erase their cultural celebrations, their own heritage and traditions, and celebrate Indigenous peoples, but even that is not enough. It's never enough. And on this point, a clip of Kamala from, I think this is back from 2021 or 22. This is making the rounds now. And here she is talking about the horrors, the alleged horrors of European colonization. Let's watch that.
It is an honor, of course, to be with you this week as we celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day, as we speak truth about our nation's history. Since 1934, every October, the United States has recognized the voyage of the European explorers who first landed on the shores of the Americas. But that is not the whole story. That has never been the whole story. Those explorers ushered in a wave of devastation for tribal nations, perpetrating violence, stealing land, and spreading disease. We must not shy away from this shameful past, and we must shed light on it and do everything we can to address the impact of the past on Native communities today.
There are so many reasons why Kamala Harris should not be president. So many things that disqualify her, and literally nothing at all that qualifies her. But even if everything else about her was great, that clip alone should be disqualifying in and of itself. So if somebody's running for president and I just emerged from a cave and I don't know anything about them, that clip's all I need to see. I don't need to see anything else. You should be disqualified from holding any political office in America, much less being the president. If that's how much you loathe America and its traditions and its heritage and its history, if you detest this country and like what it is and its history, then no, you can't lead. You're not fit. So I know you listen to me rant about this every year, and well, this year will be no different because it's important. So just weighing in on this phony debate once again, to clarify a few things. Do you know why Columbus should have a holiday and Indigenous people should not? Well, because Columbus was a great man of history whose achievements helped to shape the world that you live in today. And in fact, it's very likely that if Columbus never lived, you would not be alive. That doesn't mean that no European would have ever discovered the Americas if not for Columbus. Likely, it would have happened eventually. But the point is that Columbus was one of those rare men of history who was so significant that if you remove him from the equation, it fundamentally reshapes everything that came after him. So much so that you, in your current form, likely would not exist, because the course of history would be so different that the specific circumstances that led to your conception would not have occurred. And people like that, the great people, the world shapers, those are the ones that you remember and celebrate and build statues to and dedicate holidays to. He helped to build the Western world. You live in the Western world. You're glad you live here. You would not want to live anywhere else. I know that because you're here and you're not living anywhere else, are you? And you sure as hell would not want to live on this continent if it was still dominated by the Stone Age tribes that Columbus encountered. You wouldn't want that. Those Stone Age tribes that were 5,000 years behind most of the rest of the world, which means that if the Europeans never came here, this whole part of the world would be now about 4,500 years behind. You would not want that. And so you could pretend that you're mourning. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's a triumph. The Europeans came here and took over this hemisphere. It's a triumph. I celebrate it. You should celebrate. We should all celebrate it. And life in this part of the world, again, it's not one that you would want. It would be a life that does not include any of the things that give you joy and meaning, any of the things that bring you comfort. Indigenous culture was primitive and brutal and absolutely caked in violence and warfare all the time as a way of life. Okay, so you living in an indigenous tribe, those wonderful, peaceful, Pocahontas indigenous tribes, it means that every night when you go to sleep for your whole life, which is probably going to be brutally short, you're always worried all the time about the raiding party coming in the middle of the night and slaughtering you in your sleep. Because by the way, that's usually how they did it. They didn't fight pitched battles. The idea of having sort of dignity in the way that you fight, a sense of kind of justice and fairness. I mean, that was an approach to warfare that was distinctly European. The so-called indigenous people, they didn't see it that way. Going to war with someone just means killing as many of them as you can by any means necessary. And that usually meant sneaking in the middle of the night and killing them and their women and children, or taking their women and children as sex slaves. So that's what it would have meant. It means that if you were a man, that every time you lay your head on the pillow, well, you didn't have a pillow, but anytime you laid down in your teepee to go to sleep, you may wake up to find a knife at your throat and your scalp being ripped off of your head. And if you're a woman or a child, at any moment, you could find yourself being carried away to a life of enslavement and sexual torture. That's what life was for these indigenous tribes. Like, that's what it was. Gentlemen, this Columbus Day, don't let woke corporations colonize your household. Take it back with Jeremy's Razors. Over 250,000 men and 4.7 stars on Amazon agree. Jeremy's Precision 5 is a damn good razor, the kind used by men who will cross oceans to defend their values. Stop giving your money to woke corporations that hate you. Order now at jeremysrazors.com and get 14.92% off. Go to jeremysrazors.com today. Now, the native cultures, I find it fascinating to study. I think I'm very interested in studying Indian tribes. I have nothing against the Indians. I think that there was, although there was all this brutality and all of this, there was also bravery and strength. But it was an inferior society. It was an inferior society. Inferior, you might say, well, how could you say inferior? I don't know, because it was inferior in every measurable way. Technology, art, philosophy, science, development, and morality. Superior in all of those ways, which is to say, again, in every measurable way, was the European society. So why not celebrate indigenous Peoples Day? Well, I'd flip the question around. Why should we celebrate it? It's like taken for granted. It's like a given. Oh yeah, we got to celebrate Indigenous people. Why? Why should we celebrate them? But what did you do? Why are we celebrating you? That's a fair question. I so often hear that, we shouldn't have Confederate monuments because they were the losers. That's the argument, right? We hear this all the time. They lost the war, so they don't get the monuments. Okay, well, the Indian tribes were the losers too. They fought a war. The Indian Wars went on for centuries. They fought and they lost. They're the losers. What are we celebrating the losers for? I thought you said we don't celebrate the losers. What happened to that? Oh, it's different because the Confederates, they were slave owners. Oh, like the Indians weren't, you moron? What do you think they were doing? Like literally any moral qualm you could possibly have with the Confederacy, you're going to find that with Indian tribes times a million, okay? So if you want to say we celebrate the winners, then I'm on board. Celebrate the winners, celebrate the great men. And I get so tired of, and by the way, this is something like, I wish it wasn't even necessary to point all this out. I don't want to rub salt in the wound. I don't want to add insult to injury. The Indian tribes were totally conquered and vanquished. And after spending hundreds and hundreds of years among themselves, slaughtering each other and fighting over land, and every piece of land that any of those Indian tribes occupied, they occupied it because they killed the people who occupied it before them. And then the Europeans came in and beat them at their own game, basically. But I'd prefer we didn't have to sit here and talk about all the reasons why the Indian cultures were in fact inferior. But it's necessary when you've got these people saying, well, get rid of American holidays and celebrate Indigenous People Day. And you've got these, Native American activists going around trying to tell me that I should be ashamed, trying to lecture me, sitting on this high and mighty moral perch. Well, when you do that, it's necessary for me to point out that, hey, buddy, do you know what your ancestors were doing? Do you realize that? Do you realize you're descended from child rapists and slavers? People that slaughtered each other en masse, savagely. You make it necessary to point that out. You don't want to point it out, then get off your perch up there, your moral high ground that you don't possess. So I get so tired of a bunch of these mediocre nobodies, a bunch of these leftist, anti-American leftists, these feckless zeros sitting there all snide and just declaring that the men who created the world they live in and gave them everything they have were bad, actually. Not that impressive, not that great, right? That's what you say. You've literally done nothing. You've accomplished nothing at all in your life, zero. That's what gets me the most, when these people, they sit there, it's Columbus. He wasn't even trying. He wasn't even trying to discover America. It was an accident. No, there was no accident, you dumbass. He set out across an unknown ocean looking for land, and he found it. Oh, but he didn't even know what land it was. Of course he didn't. How could he have known? No one had sailed that direction yet. He didn't have the map. Okay? These are the people who made the map. They didn't have it, so they didn't know. You know what it was like 500 years ago? You didn't know what was happening in other parts of the world. If you wanted to find out, you had to go there. He wasn't drifting aimlessly like driftwood. He was looking for land, and he found it. And then he went home, and he returned 3 more times. You try it. If you think it's so easy, you try it sometime. Try sailing across 3,000 nautical miles without any modern navigation equipment at all. Go ahead, give it a try. Just try leaving from Spain and making it to the Caribbean with no modern navigation, not even a map. You know what you have? You have the stars. And that's it. See how you do. Something tells me you're not going to do very well. Something tells me that you, as someone who can't even make it to McDonald's down the street without a GPS, something tells me that you are not going to be able to do that. And yet you think you can sit there as Columbus. Not that impressive. Sorry, not impressed. Sorry, not impressed by people who built civilization while I can't even build like a couch from IKEA with instructions. So these people, they really piss me off. If you couldn't tell. Hey, YouTube, thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like access to my full show with no ads, you should go to dailywire.com and use promo code Walsh to get 2 months free on all annual plans. See you there.